Hello, my dear viewers. It's good to be with you. This is Olga Demchuk, a researcher of the inner world of personality. I will never tire of thanking you. Thank you for supporting my YouTube channel. Today, I would like to talk about non-being. I promised Marina I would record a video on this topic. So I am keeping my promise. I have titled this video, Watch Over Me, Non-Being. As always, together with you, we will look into our evolution, into the history of our evolution, to understand what this is all about. I have already spoken many times about the dominant patterns that are formed in us during infancy. That is the moment when you are lying there, being cared for, given everything you need, while you entertain yourself, eat and sleep, entertain, eat and sleep. The memory of this carefree and happiness compels us to actively seek the delightful repetition of such wonderful and fulfilling experiences. In other words, if we don't realize that this dominant pattern has power over us, we don't understand why we take certain actions. Why do we seek this state so much? Why are we unhappy when we work and happy when we rest, for example? This is the influence of that dominant pattern. It almost devalues even our achievements because happiness and merit are seen as the ability to rest. But aside from this dominant pattern, there is something even deeper, the dominance of non-being. Many psychoanalysts explore the theme of the drive toward death. I would say that it is a drive toward non-being, a return to the state before conception. At the moment of conception, our clock starts ticking. Time begins. And at that moment, there is both the beginning of life and already its end. In other words, our life has been set in motion. But before conception, when we did not yet exist, there was no end to life and there were no problems. No, for me, there are no problems. That is precisely why, when problematic situations arise, we unconsciously strive for the space of non-being, where we can switch off this reality. So you see, this is the price, and an escape from reality is a halt to life. In other words, I fall out of it into a coma or a state of suspended animation. When we talk about the being and non-being of the personality, about how much a person truly exists or does not exist, it is important to understand that, in general, the personality does not truly exist. That is, for the most part, we are constantly in a kind of desert. We are caught up in some subjective experience in our emotions, and we participate very little in real life. That is, we can live this life without overloading it with extra meaning, with our own dominant ideas and misconceptions. We can simply experience pure life. And each of us is either more awake or less awake. And each of us spends more time asleep than awake. In other words, this contact with reality is something we must always remember. It is a vivid sensation of truly living in the moment, fully feeling your body. You realize that you are in contact with this world, that you are observing it and either understanding or contemplating it. And it always feels like the light is switched on, but overall we exist in a kind of forgetfulness. I once observed myself when I was deeply engaged with reality and realized just how demanding it is to stay present in reality. When you are aware, it feels as if every event becomes very significant. For example, I was walking to the store and tried to enter this state, a state of being fully present in reality. And then it's as if every step becomes an event. You fully sense how you move your leg, how you make the decision to take the next step. In other words, it's quite challenging for the psyche, and a person needs to train themselves to withstand this reality, this actuality. And if a person has a weak mind, if they process little information per second, then they also participate less in the flow of events. In addition to this, it's important to train your emotions, to build emotional resilience. In other words, the extent to which I can withstand emotions will also determine my level of participation. But we'll talk more about that at the School of Emotions. Join us later, we'll post it. But for now, let's return to the topic of non-being. I've titled this video, Watch Over Me. Why? Because it's as if we constantly need someone, a kind of awakener, who will keep reminding us, don't sleep, live, don't sleep, live, put down your phone, live, come back to reality, live. And then, for example, it's your day off, and suddenly you get a work message. You were relaxed, you were immersed in your own sort of emotional jelly, and then you're yanked out of that state like a midwife pulling you from the womb. And you're ordered to live, to switch on, to be present. And these people who switch us on the one hand, we resent them, but on the other hand, without them, we fall into a very deep sleep. It's like how people resent their boss, for example, who's always bothering them and demanding something. Or many people are mistaken, thinking that if they start working for themselves, that's it. Nothing else will be required. Everything will just happen. But for example, a company director is responsible for obligations and for their employees. Those who are waiting for their salaries, you're dependent on them too. Even a blogger who only makes videos depends on their viewers because the viewers are waiting for those videos. If he stops making them, people will lose interest in him. In other words, you see, there's no way to escape this. But we have this dream that someday, finally, that moment will come for us. A time when I won't have to do anything at all, when nothing will be required of me. And we strive for that. We reach for it. But the moment we actually arrive at nothing is required, nothing needs to be done now, then somewhere on the edge of our consciousness, we start to feel anxiety, which tells us, look, you're not doing anything. There's nothing you need to do. And we shouldn't try to get rid of this anxiety because it's precisely that part of us which watches over us, which wakes us up and doesn't let us fall completely asleep. Because if this awakener isn't there, a person can easily slip into oblivion. Some people who have built businesses, and for example, they have passive income, but they encounter a sense of emptiness. That is, you have money, you can live however you want, but without that sense of must, life becomes empty. In other words, you fall into oblivion, and because you don't have to go to work, you might end up watching TV shows until morning and then lose half the day. Or since you don't have anywhere to be, you might just idle around playing computer games. And then afterwards, you realize the meaninglessness of the time you've spent. The person who needed it, or the thing that needed to be done, is no longer there. It's as if there's no one left to be accountable to, no answer. But why does this unpleasant feeling of a wasted life arise? Each of us, if we look inside, feels that we have many lost opportunities, much of life that has slipped away. All these missed opportunities, these lost moments of life. And when we think about this, we do so with sadness. Yet at the same time, we hold on to some illusory dream that we will end up in paradise, where nothing will ever need to be done. Finally, I will be able to stop evolving. At last, I won't have to rush anywhere anymore. And without this evolution, without an external goal to strive for, a person first becomes motionless, and then the dominant patterns from their past life begin to draw them into oblivion. That is, at first one is drawn into these infantile dominants, and then ultimately into non-existence itself, either into a prenatal state or even into a state before conception altogether. In other words, these dominants are immense in their intensity. Each of us has them. And they will call out, I would call this the eternal call. An eternal call to idleness, an eternal call to drift. In this amniotic fluid, the eternal call to the moment when we did not yet exist. In the moment of non-existence before conception, I did not exist, and neither did my problems. So in fact, if we don't keep pedaling, if we don't set external goals, we will be consumed by these dominants. They will engulf us, and we will feel this emptiness. And this is the state of non-being. The one who pulls us out of it, we seem to rebel against him, as if he is our tormentor. The one who tells us, you have to do this. And this rebellion can be directed both against the inner tormentor, who seems to take away my comfort, my happiness, and against an external one as well. That is, the leader automatically takes on the role of the tormentor, this taskmaster who always needs something from you. And this rebellion can also be directed against oneself. For example, when you decide to start going to the gym, and then this feeling of I have to go appears, and you start putting on a show for yourself, turning it into a comedy or a tragedy. How tired you are, a tragedy, how exhausted you are, and you start looking for excuses not to go. And it's as if you set this goal for yourself, you decided on your own that you have to do it. And at the same time, you already begin to rebel against it. This have to, telling yourself a truly tearful, quite pitiful story about why you absolutely can't go to the gym. And by skipping just once, a person opens the door to hell. Do you think I want to record videos every week? It's a lot of work. I spend about approximately 6 entire hours carefully writing the detailed script. I can't do anything else during that time, 5 or 6 hours. Then I have to put something on, sit down, remember. The entire text is in my head because I speak without a teleprompter, straight from memory. And sometimes I also feel a rebellion inside when I say, that's it, I'm tired of this, I don't want to do it anymore. But I know that if I skip recording just once, I'll open the doors to hell. Because I'll set a precedent, then next time I might throw the same tantrum for myself. And on the one hand, you almost feel like you're trapped in a dark, oppressive mind, a mere slave to all of this relentless, demanding work. But if you step outside your own subjectivity and realize that this is what gives your life meaning, that this is what keeps you from falling asleep, from slipping into oblivion, then you start to approach it not as a victim, but with gratitude for having this sense of purpose. And this constant complaining about yourself, about I don't want to, I won't do what I have to, this rebellion against must, this belief in escaping must, trying to deceive or postpone what needs to be done, it's all just a game you play with yourself. But if we understand the essence of this dominant force of non-being, it becomes easier for us to overcome it. And so this tormentor, the one who tells us what must be done, becomes our awakener. For example, I serve as your awakener because otherwise you would have already forgotten about your inner world and just kept drifting along. But I say, no, stop, become aware, reflect, pay attention to yourself. I think each of you has thought, my God, this Demchuk just won't calm down. He won't let me simply enjoy my comfort in peace. But you see, on one hand, I evoke these ambivalent feelings. I'm like a tormentor who doesn't let you sleep peacefully. But on the other hand, I'm also the one who keeps you from falling asleep and keeps you alert. Isn't that so? It energizes you and draws your attention to yourself. This is the quality of an engaged life, which I mentioned earlier, about a quick mind and emotional resilience. It creates a sense of participation, because a person can be constantly rushing around, almost like a workaholic, but still lack real involvement in life, real engagement, because they are not reflecting on it. He is a person who is running from some fear that is chasing him. And many people have said that when there was no money and they had to survive, it felt like there was a motivation to work. But as soon as the fear disappeared, it was as if there was no longer any reason to move forward. And then these dominant patterns begin to take over, pulling a person into oblivion. And many people, after achieving something or finding success, begin to regress. Their business regresses, they themselves gain weight, and they start to look duller. This happens precisely because they have decided for themselves, that's it, stop, I don't need to go anywhere else. And this running away from a fear, in other words, I run because of an intense fear, because something menacing is chasing me, creates the movement of life. I would like you to reconsider your attitude. Even if it's out of fear, I have a goal, and in this way I overcome the pool of my own oblivion. You can move forward by choice because I have chosen to grow. For example, I know for certain that I chose to develop myself because I understand what will happen if I stop. I no longer want to return to that oblivion. And this comparison, this understanding of cause and effect, that you could stop making videos, stop writing articles, stop running workshops, stop going to the gym. I can do all of this, but it's as if I'm actually choosing the consequences. So it's not because I have to, I do it because I understand what will happen if I don't. Those very gates to hell will open and they will pull me into complete oblivion. I want to draw your attention to this act, and I'll emphasize it again. When we put on this act for ourselves, dragging our feet, feeling how our head starts to ache, how fatigue sets in, precisely because we are rebelling against what is necessary. Often this is self-deception. Our capabilities actually increase when we stop deceiving ourselves. And I'm not arguing, you can get tired. Truly, but pay attention, aren't you putting on this act for yourself? Victims who suddenly start to limp and inventing fatigue, and most importantly, believing in it and considering that non-existence that awaits us, just relax, relax, and you're already there. I think it will be easier without rebellion, protest, or anger to choose to move forward, to choose evolution, to choose growth, and to choose to achieve your goals. Share your comments and your thoughts. Join the School of Emotions. There will be 2 practical lectures where we will explore our emotional world. And now I say goodbye to you. See you soon.